Conversation with independent presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from his battle to get on the ballot in more states, the accusations that he is a spoiler candidate, and what he would do about what he says is the crisis at the border. He has been there twice in recent months. So you're on 3 state ballots right now. How are you going to get on the others? I know you've started your own We the People party, and then there's a libertarian area where you could get on ballots in that way as well. What's the plan, and how quickly will it happen?
We're going to be announcing new states every week from now on. We're way ahead of our benchmarks. We will be on the ballot in 50 states and the District of Columbia. We have, I think we have 80,000 volunteers now on the ground. We're finding it extraordinarily easy, actually, to persuade people to sign, and we're ahead of all of our expectations.
What do you say to those who say you're just a spoiler? You were very critical of Ralph Nader back in 2000. You wrote a piece in the New York Times criticizing him and saying that he was going to hurt the environment by handing the election to George W. Bush. So what do you say now to those who say that you're in the same position?
I hope to be a spoiler for both President Trump and President Biden. I hope to take votes from each of them and win the election.
So you don't consider yourself a spoiler?
No, I'm not in here to do anything except to win.
President Biden was in an ice cream shop, and he was asked about Gaza, and he said, while eating ice cream, oh, there's going to be a ceasefire by the weekend. No, not by the weekend, by right after the weekend. And it's not the first time that we've heard him take on serious foreign policy issues in that kind of light environment. We don't hear from him a lot in terms of laying out his thinking on some of these big foreign policy issues. What do you think about his candidacy at this point?
I think he needs to come out of the White House and show Americans that he has the cognitive capacity to, and the mental acuity to handle this job at probably the most challenging time now, at least in recent American history. We're facing issues that are existential. We're involved in 2 wars. We have AI coming down, which is going to change everything, and there's enormous dangers in it. We need we have an economic crisis in this country where, the middle class is disappearing. It's been torpedoed. Where 57% of Americans can't put their hands on $1,000. Where an entire generation of kids cannot buy a home. This is a crisis. We need a president who is thinking about these things, who is articulating the solution for the American people.
Do you not have confidence that he can serve?
I think he needs to show Americans that he, a lot of these decisions are the products of complex and nuanced thought, and those thoughts need to be articulated to the American people in a way that we all support him. And I do not think that that's happening now. Our children's lives are dependent on that 3:00 a.m. call, and we need to know that we have a president who can wake up in the middle of the night and who is on his feet and thinking about those things. And I think a lot of Americans have lost confidence in that.
So you're saying you don't think he's actually in charge?
You know what? I have a personal issue, which is my Secret Service protection. And I've known President Biden for 40 years, and he was a friend. With all of the issues about him, he was somebody who I thought at least had a kind of fundamental decency. And the fact, I just don't believe that he would have personally made the decision to deny me for Secret Service protection. I think somebody else is making those decisions.
You've been supportive of Israel's battle in Gaza. What about now? Would you be encouraging Israel to stop the bombing in Gaza, or do you support, as Bibi Netanyahu has called for this week, that they have to finish the job and eliminate Hamas?
Well, I think Israel, like every other nation, has a right to defend itself. I think we have to come down to the fact that Hamas has said we don't want to negotiate. We want only one thing, which is the annihilation of Israel, the extermination of Jews in this part of the world. So I think, I'm not a fan of Bibi Netanyahu's. I don't think most Israelis are. I think he would be voted out, but I think most Israelis are overwhelmed. Israel is today unified because they feel embattled. They feel that this is an existential risk to them. I think it's a complex issue and it's not easy, but we have to look at how do you avoid civilian deaths over the long term, not just immediately.
There's some discussion that Joe Biden, the president, could lose the vote in Michigan based on a stance that's very similar to the one that you just presented, because he could lose 200,000 Muslim voters in Michigan. Michigan's a state that you think you just put on the list of when you might be able to win. Is that going to hurt you there?
I think, we need to make that distinction that Hamas is not the friend of the Palestinian people. Hamas is the abuser of the Palestinian people, and we need to point to Hamas, when we see civilian deaths happening, which are horrific and unacceptable, we need to understand that, that Hamas is at fault.
Let me ask you this. With regard to the border, there is a battle on Capitol Hill right now that many conservatives believe that you should secure the border before you send another dollar to help Ukraine. Do you agree with that?
I think the Ukraine war should be ended. And I think I wouldn't necessarily couple those issues, but I think the Ukraine war is a war of choice, that it's a war that's easily settled, and that we should not be spending any more money in Ukraine. We need that money here.
Do you believe that any person who has crossed the border and commits a crime should be deported from this country?
Of course. Of course they should be deported. And the major thing is to shut down the border, which we can do pretty much overnight. And that, through a combination of policy of reinstating the Migrant Protection Act, which requires people who are coming through with asylum claims that their case be adjudicated in Mexico, not the United States. We should end the catch and release program and have a catch and return program at the border.
And build a wall?
We need the wall. We need a physical barrier, yes, a wall in the urban areas and places where migrants can disappear very quickly. And then we need other infrastructure, including monitoring, long-range cameras, lights, fences, and a lot of the other areas. You don't need to put a wall 2,200 miles from Brownsville, Texas to San Diego, but you need monitoring systems. And we had those in place, and the Biden administration dismantled them.
So a lot more there, and you can hear the entire discussion with the panel in East Palestine and also my one-on-one with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. on the Untold Story podcast. That's going to be available. Both of those will be available. A double podcast drop this Friday. I encourage you to listen to it at foxnewspodcasts.com.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.